Okay, so everyone sit with a nice straight spine. Close your eyes. Put your attention on the third eye point. Try to feel some kind of sensation where the third eye is. Whatever sensation is there, just try to experience it. Inhale deeply. And exhale. Put the hands together at the center of the chest, keeping that attention on the third eye point, and inhale deeply and hold the breath. And exhale completely. Again, inhale deeply. And exhale. Inhale to begin tuning in. Inhale. And exhale, relax the hands down in the lap, keep the eyes closed. Now just try to feel your body, feel the presence of your body. Try to feel the arms, the legs, the back, the neck. Feel your sitting on the ground or on the floor, wherever you're sitting. Just feel the sensation of the body. Try to feel where the body is tight, where it's relaxed, where it's still, where it's moving. Where there's no sensation, where there's some sensation. Okay, so inhale deeply. And exhale completely. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about what it means to vibrate the infinite. And as I'm giving this talk, feel free to interrupt with questions. If you have any questions or comments or want me to clarify something, feel free to turn on your microphone and speak up so we can try to make this a more interactive dialogue, even though we're all in different places. So if we think about what it means to vibrate the infinite, and how do we relate to this infinite? And we're going to look at this from the perspective of yoga psychology. And what is yoga psychology? But it is the answer to this question. And this question is, who are you? When we compare yoga psychology with Western psychology, we look at Western psychology as trying to help us adapt to our living condition so that we can move about this world without many problems, or with being able to deal with these problems and still function in today's society. Whereas yoga psychology is a little different. It is not about helping someone adapt to the living conditions or overcome psychological problems, even though this is aspects of it. But the main perspective, or the main point of view of yoga psychology, is to raise your consciousness to higher levels so that you can answer this question of, who are you? And this is a question that you're asking every moment of every day, whether you're conscious of this or not. By the way you interact with the world, by the way that you experience the world, you're constantly asking yourself, who am I? And you're reacting from this perspective, whether you're conscious of this or not. And for most people, they're unconscious of this. And so this question gets answered based on not the truth, but based on the impulses. And these impulses affect your communication. And so then we get back to this question of, who are you? And since many of you have been doing yoga for a while, you probably know what the answer is, right? We say, we are not the mind, we are not the body, but we are this consciousness which is illuminating this experience. And I think everyone in this workshop knows this intellectually. And this is a common mistake people have, is that they mistaken knowledge from the intellect from experiencing, right? And we can know things from three ways. We can know something from what we have read in a book or what some teacher has told us, and we think we know it. Or we could know something through our clever minds, through inference. We can see that it's cloudy outside and we say, okay, I think it's going to rain. And then there's the third way to know something, and this is through experience. And this is really the only way to know something. The other two are just aspects or points along the path to truly knowing something. Because I say this, when I say that you are not your mind and you are not your body, I'm sure at least half of you are saying, oh, this is very beginning level yoga stuff. Tell me something more advanced. I already know this. But if you look at your life, you look at even your yoga practice, and it's saying something different. Because when you're holding a posture and the mind is telling you that you can no longer hold this posture, that the shoulders are hurting or the back is hurting, and this voice gets louder and louder until you release the posture. And then after this, I say, well, you're not your mind and you're not your body. Why did you release the posture? And you released it because you were identifying with the mind and the body. And so intellectually, you may know you're not your mind and you're not your body, but experientially, you don't know how to realize this. You don't know how to experience it because you're still giving in to the impulses. And so through yoga psychology, we try to make you aware of what these impulses are, when they're happening, and how to overcome them, how to not let them interfere with who you are. And so when we talk about vibrating the infinite, we're talking about illuminating your life without resistance. Because it is your consciousness that is illuminating this experience. It's shining the light throughout your experience so that you may interact with your world. And how you relate to this based on your karma, based on your habit patterns, and based on your perspective. And so if we try to understand then that you're not your mind and you're not your body, then who are you? We can say consciousness, but what does this mean? So we can look at where we come from. We are made from the Creator. Right? This is our origins from the Creator, what we call God, what we call love, what we call the infinite, what we call this creative manifestation. And who are you is you are the creative manifestation of the Creator. You are creativity. And what is the purpose of creativity? It is to express itself. And then we look at this perspective then and say we are here to express ourselves. We are creativity. And when I say this, there's many people who say, well, I'm not a very creative person. I can't paint, I can't draw, I can't sculpt. And so many people go through life and think that they're not creative. And how is this possible if you are creativity? And it's because, again, from perspective. And what is the correct perspective to understand your creative potential? So imagine that you're making dinner for someone, and it's that special person in your life, whether it's your partner or a family member or a good friend, and you tell this person that you made dinner with love. What does this mean? And how is this different than the other times that you made dinner? When you made it just for yourself? How is this different? What does it mean to make dinner with love? Well, you're welcome to turn your microphones on and answer the questions. What does this mean? What's different when you're making dinner with love?
I think it's about giving to other people, giving back to the universe or something.
Okay. Could you make dinner with love for yourself?
Yes.
Okay. So what is different than when you make dinner with this love than when you make dinner not thinking about this, just you're in a hurry or whatever, your day is going by and you're just making it for yourself, because we don't do this every day, do we? So what is the difference in your approach? What is the difference in you're right, you're correct, it's giving back to the universe, but more specifically, what does this mean?
I think is about blessing the food,
Okay, yes, this is part of it.
and you're going through kind of a. I mean, I don't do every day, but it's going to the source where the food are coming. So you start
Okay.
from the roots
Uh-huh.
until they're coming to you
Okay.
on your plate. So you're blessing from the the time they are in the ground, in the soil, to when they're coming out, and when the man or the woman will take the food, and then they will sell to a supermarket or any in a private shop. And then when you go and buy and coming into your home, you cook. So there is all a process.
Right. I like this. Okay. So now when you're cooking and you're cooking for your partner, what are you thinking about? What are you thinking about when you're making this special dinner for your partner or for that loved one? What's going on in the mind, in the body?
You are creating, you're
Okay.
making something.
Yeah, you're making something, but what is are you thinking about what you have to do next week? Are you thinking about the bills that you need to pay? No. You're in the moment, right? You're in the moment, and what you're doing is you all touched upon this, is that you're connecting, you say, with this universe, but you're connecting with this internal experience that you're having. And when you're making this dinner, you're saying, okay, how do I feel about this person? How do I feel in this moment? And then this is translating into, how do I want this plate to look? How do I want the table to look? How do I want this experience to take place? And so you're taking this internal experience, which is this connection to the infinite, if there's without resistance, and you're manifesting this as your personal touch in what you're doing. Right? Does this sound like the experience that you're having when you do this? That you're in the moment and you're connecting with how you feel about this situation and how you feel in the body, how you feel in the mind, and how your overall being feels, and how you want to put this feeling, this experience, into some manifestation, whether it's cooking dinner, designing something, cleaning your house. You can do anything with this attention. You can clean your house with love. And when you compare this to the times that you're cleaning the house or you're cooking dinner and your mind is thinking about what you have to do, what problems you had that day, you're not present. The attention isn't there. The connection to the true being, to how you feel, and putting in this expression is not complete. And so we can say love and creativity are the same. There's no difference. And so to say you're not creative is saying that you're not love. And you are the manifestation of creativity. And your purpose is to be in this moment in everything that you do and express this love. Whether it's having a conversation with someone, even if it's a professional conversation, you can do this with love. Because what is love but is the absence of resistance to the self? And so this is what you're trying to do, is you're trying to create a life that expresses your true self without resistance. And everything you do should be done in this way, because right now what's happening is everything you're doing, maybe at times you're putting this love, this attention into what you're doing, but many times it's these unconscious impulses that are affecting your expression. And so this is the whole process of life, is to learn how to illuminate your path with this love, with this creativity all the time. And to do this, we have to understand what are the obstacles to this for me, for you. And to understand that, we have to understand how our life is being illuminated by this consciousness. Because it's different for everyone. There's not one person who's living like someone else. Because everyone's experience is unique. But then we also hear, well, we're all one. So how are we all unique if we're all one? And the way to think about this is to think about breathing. You all have your own lungs. And you breathe in the air, but the air is the same for everyone. We share the same air. But we have our own lungs. And the same thing with the mind, is we have our own brain, our own mind, but we have the collective consciousness that we're tapped into. And so it's your experience of connecting to this consciousness. And so then the question again becomes, well, why are we different if we're all tapped into the same consciousness? And that is like saying, how do you define God? Tell me one word that could define God. You can speak about every word that exists and it's still not a definition of God. It's indefinable. And so this collective consciousness has so many aspects that you don't know about, that we don't know about, but it's this collective consciousness that we share. And we can look at individual people and say, well, this person has a propensity for speaking, or this person has a propensity for drawing, or everyone has some different abilities, capabilities that they excel in or that they connect to. And so if we think of this collective consciousness as the whole of not just this world, but of God, of everything, and then we connect to different aspects of it. And the different aspects depend on how you are vibrating. And so if you're vibrating to such a subtle level that you can go into the deep subtleties of this consciousness, you have a more subtle experience in this life. And we say that you're awake. Or the contrary, that your experience is so coarse and you lack the capacity to comprehend or acknowledge the subtleties, you have a very coarse mind. And your vibration is very coarse. And then this translates into an experience. What experience does someone have with this mind, with this consciousness? And so this is the whole point of life, is to answer this question of who are you? And the way we answer this question is going from the very coarse vibrations to the most subtle vibration. And the most subtle vibration is God. And so this is the entire perspective of life, of yoga psychology, is to understand and comprehend, and most importantly, to experience. Because intellectually you could know this, but to experience this, then you just surely know it. Because many of these experiences are beyond the mind. In fact, if you talk to anyone who's self-realized and you ask them about this experience, there's no words to describe it. because this experience happens beyond the mind. And this is the whole point of yoga, is to train the mind so that it works with us instead of against us. And so this is mastering your projection, mastering this connection to the infinite. Okay. So what I'd like to do before we go on to the next aspect of this is to do a little meditation to help us feel this connection to the infinite, to link to the infinite. So everyone sit with a nice straight spine. Put the left hand in Gyan Mudra resting on the left knee, and the right finger blocking the right nostril. And you're going to inhale deeply through the left nostril, taking about 15 seconds or so. And then when you exhale, you're going to vibrate Ong, but you're not vibrating it through your mouth. The mouth will be open, but you're vibrating it through the left nostril. Okay, so it should go Keep that going. Just keep continuing that, vibrating the Ong through the left nostril, not through the mouth, not through the throat. Ong. 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 Inhale, relax the hands down. Exhale, And let the breath go naturally. Try to feel what you're experiencing. Feel the sensations. Okay, so inhale deeply, exhale, bring yourself back a little bit here. Open the eyes slowly. So take an inventory of how you feel right at this moment. Right, how's the shoulders feel, the arm, the heartbeat, the mouth, the hands, the knees, the feet? Does it feel the same as before we did the meditation? Or does it feel different? And if it feels different, what feels different? What sensations are you experiencing where? Remember, I said the whole point of life of yoga is to go from the very coarse to the very subtle, and the most subtle vibration being that of God. And so what you need to learn how to do is to train the mind, because the mind starts out very coarse, and we need to learn how to create awareness of the subtle. And this is why when people always tell me, when I'm counseling them or after a yoga class, they'll tell me, oh, I'm too sensitive. I'm overly sensitive. And they look at the sensitivity as a negative, which is kind of ironic because they're going to a yoga class to make themselves more sensitive, and then they're telling me they're too sensitive. Why is that? Why are they saying that they're too sensitive? when this is the whole point of yoga. This is the whole point of life, is to become more sensitive. And it's because they're not articulating their experience properly. The problem isn't that they're too sensitive. The problem is that they're too reactive. And this is what they're talking about. Because the whole point is to become more sensitive. Because if you think about how the awareness begins, or how we can experience a greater awareness, by understanding the way the body and the mind interact with our consciousness. Because it's very important that we understand this, because when we don't, we allow a lot of the impulses to affect our behavior and to affect our experience in life. And so what is, or how do we learn how to experience this sensitivity? And the first thing to do is to understand, again, we get to this question of who are you, but we look at the temporary for a moment, and we look at the body, because the body and the mind is like an antenna. Consciousness is not localized. Like I said, we have our own lungs, we share the same air. The air isn't within me only for the amount of time I'm breathing, but the air is external. We're bringing the air in. And the same thing with the consciousness. The consciousness is external. Bringing it in through this mind-body vehicle. And so it's important to understand how this mind-body vehicle is connecting to this universal energy of this collective consciousness, this infinite consciousness, so that we can, again, try to experience this truth. And so when we look at the body, we look at it and we say the body is this solid mass. But this is really not correct. Your body is trillions of atoms vibrating. And they're vibrating so fast that they appear to be solid. The same thing with the ground that you're standing on or sitting on. It's not solid. It's a bunch of atoms being projected at such a speed that it appears to be solid. And same thing with the body. And what affects this projection? A better question would be, what doesn't affect this projection? Right? So if we look right now at the body, in every millimeter of your body, there is a sensation, because vibration causes sensation. How can a vibration not cause some kind of sensation? It's impossible. So every vibration has a sensation, which means if you're vibrating, there's a sensation in every millimeter of your body at this exact moment. But your mind is too coarse to feel all the sensations. You're able to feel the very coarse sensations. You can feel the aches in the shoulders and the back or the knees and maybe some other sensations, but you can't feel a sensation in every millimeter of your body because your mind is not trained, it's not aware, it's not awake enough to be conscious of this. But unconsciously, your mind feels it. And it does this and reacts unconsciously. And this is what causes your habit patterns, is this reaction to the vibrations, to the sensations. So what happens? And this is really the way mantras work as well, right? You chant a mantra, and that mantra creates a particular vibration, and then it changes the vibration within the body. And what it does is it makes you aware of what this vibration feels like. Because everything is within. There's nothing external that you need. You are complete. And so what you're doing by chanting a mantra or engaging in some activity is you're reinforcing that feeling. You're trying to make that feeling conscious. So if you're doing a mantra that's supposed to open the heart, or a mantra that's supposed to have some other effect, what you're doing is you're trying to feel that vibration so that you can start to recognize this vibration within. You can make this vibration more pronounced, more constant, or stronger. And you're doing this not just through chanting mantras, but you're doing this through your thoughts. You're doing this through your actions. You're doing this through what you consume. What you consume eating or visually or orally, whatever you consume is causing a vibration. And is that vibration creating subtle awareness, or is it creating a numbness? Because this is the fight. This is the fight that everyone has, is the resistance. Because when we talk about, well, what we're talking about is being authentic. Right? I said that you are this creative consciousness that is illuminating this experience. But what happens is that, based on your karma, is that you're resisting aspects of this experience. You're resisting aspects of your consciousness, or the flow of consciousness. And this resistance becomes your habit patterns, is your karma. And so if we look at it in this way. So I don't know if they even still have these projectors. They had them when I was a kid. They have the projector where you put the slide in and it turns around and it projects it onto the wall. Does everyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah? Okay. So you put a slide in it, and the slide has images and has colors, and you put it on and the light projects it onto the wall. And so the light is being resisted by the shapes and the colors of the slide. But when you take out the slide, it's just the pure white light shining on the wall. And this is how you can think of the resistance that is being projected through your experience. Is it being corrupted by all the colors and shapes that you see, the illusions that you have, the false identifications, because you are identifying with temporary things. And so what we want to do is we want to learn how to become aware of these corruptions to the projection of our consciousness. And like I said, we did this little meditation, and it creates a particular vibration within you. And you want to learn how to tune in your mind to feel that connection. And with all the meditations, with all the mantras and all these experiences that are designed to illuminate your being, is you want to understand the feeling that they create. Because every vibration is unique, right? If you have a thought that's a happy thought, and you have a thought that's a negative thought, you feel very different, don't you? And if this is consistent, you change the way you feel. This is where anxiety and all these manifestations come from, is from the repetitive thinking in a particular way and identifying with the thoughts. And each thought is unique in its vibration. The same way as different movements and different experiences create a different vibration, different sensation. And so when we talk about intuition, right? We talk about how do we connect to our intuition? How do we connect to that vibration within us that gives us this understanding of truth? And many people don't understand when they're experiencing intuition or when they're not, because they don't understand. Like I said, everything has a very unique sensation. And so, where does intuition exist? But it exists beyond the mind. In fact, thoughts have a very coarse vibration when you compare it to intuition. And so this is why when you're thinking, you're unable to connect to the intuition. When does intuition happen is between the thoughts, beyond the thoughts. And so to connect to this intuition, you have to stop the mind. And again, intuition has a very particular sensation. And when you learn how to create the subtle awareness of what the sensation feels like, you're able to access this intuition when you want. And you're able to understand when you're connecting to it, when you're not. And for many people, this is a big doubt that they have. Is this just me guessing something, or is this my intuition telling me something? But when you're able to tune yourself into what the sensation feels like, you're able to understand the experience. And this is what you need to learn how to do with your life, is to create the subtle awareness of the sensations that everything is creating. In fact, truth has a particular vibration. And you're probably aware of this in a very coarse way, right? If you go to buy a car and the person is talking to you and you can tell they're lying, right? They're telling you, oh, this car is perfect, there's no problems. You get a feeling that they're not being honest with you. Or any other experience. Someone is telling you they didn't do something and they did do it, and you know they did, and you can feel it in the way they're expressing themselves. And many people can do this at a very coarse level. But when you're able to create a true awareness, or the very deep, subtle awareness of what truth is, you can see the truth in everything. And this is why, if you've ever experienced someone who is self-aware or self-realized or very close to it, and they speak, they know truth. And as you go down this path, you'll recognize that when you see people and you hear their experience or you hear them speak, you can experience what is truth and what is not without really even having to understand the topic or the subject, because you're able to tune into the vibration of truth. And the further you go down this path, the closer you get to understanding the ultimate truth, Ekankar, Sat Nam. And this is cultivating this sensitivity, this awareness, by understanding the vibrations within the body. And so how do these vibrations get resisted in the framework of the body? What happens when you get angry? No one else has gotten angry? Does anyone ever experienced anger? What's going on? What happens when you get angry? What happens to you physically?
I get warm.
Okay.
Very warm.
Yeah. And what else? You get warm. How's the breath? What happens to the breath when you get angry?
Short breath, kind of narrow kind of senses.
Yeah. And how's the heartbeat? Does it slow down?
No.
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 It speeds up.
Yep.
Why do you think when you get angry that the breath and the heart change? What is happening that's causing this?
It must be also related to hormonal system.
Well,
Some sort of chemicals that make sure that.
well, if we look at back up for a second, and we'll get to this. But what is the body but a manifestation of the mind? You know, when they tell you you can't judge someone by the way they look, right? We've all heard this. This is totally incorrect. Everyone is exactly how they look. The only problem is when we look at them, we project our own psychology onto them, so our interpretation is incorrect. But if you're able to take away all your projections, everyone is exactly how they look. Because your psychology projects your physiology, projects your physical being. Right? We can look at someone and say, oh, that person looks like a very nervous person. We can see their body and how their posture is, or we can say that person looks like an angry person, or whatever it is. And whatever your capacity is to take away your own projections and to see accurately. And so then if we can say something is hormonal or not, where does this originate? It all originates in the mind. Everything originates in the mind. And so what happens when you get angry is, remember I talked about that your body is just trillions of atoms vibrating very fast. And when you have some type of thought or some aspect of psychology, that vibration gets projected in different parts of the body, depending on what the psychology is. So anger gets projected in this area of the heart chakra. And the vibration of anger is very dense compared to, say, the vibration of no anger, right? You said you feel this tightness, you feel this heaviness, this warmness, and this dense vibration interrupts the flow of prana. Prana is a very subtle vibration, right? This is a big part of yoga. One of the most important parts to learning how to heal yourself and to control yourself is to create awareness of the subtle flow of prana. And it's very subtle. And the prana is what is animating the body, right? This flow of consciousness, this flow of prana. And when it can't get to the heart and it can't get to the lungs, because the vibration of anger is restricting the heart from beating. It's restricting the flow of blood going in and out of the heart. So the heart has to bump harder. Then it's also restricting the capacity of the lungs to expand. And so the lungs have to, the breath has to get deeper and harder in order to operate. And when the anger goes away, then this subsides, this goes away. Maybe a imprint of it is left there, but it goes away mostly. Except if it's a habit pattern for you. So if it's a habit pattern, there will be a residual vibration that will be left there. And then at some point in your life, you'll have problems with the heart, problems with the lungs, problems with the liver. And depending on how heavy this karma and how difficult this obstruction or this aspect of your psychology is, it'll cause disease, heart disease, some lung problems. And this is how illness and disease is formed, is through these vibrations that are restricting the flow of prana throughout your body. And so if you can learn how to feel these sensations and to feel the prana and learn how to control the prana to go through this, to move through this, and understanding when the heart is not operating properly, how to control the prana, how to understand the psychology that is making this be this way. And this is how you cure illness, right? There's 3 aspects to cure illness: the psychological, the physiological, and the behavioral. The psychology, what psychology is causing me to get angry all the time? The physiology, what is happening when I'm getting angry? What is the obstruction? And the behavior is what is reinforcing this. So you can say, oh, every time I get angry, I do this. Every time I get scared, I do this. Every time that I get nervous, I do this. And this is how we manage the vibrations, because we don't feel comfortable with these vibrations. And we do this more often than not unconsciously, but we do this consciously as well. What happens when you have a bad day, you don't feel good about yourself, maybe you start to overeat. You eat when you're not hungry, or you indulge in alcohol or drugs or too much television or whatever it is to distract you from that vibration, right? The people who overeat or eat when they're not hungry, what they're doing is they're trying to change the way they feel. Same thing with drugs and alcohol, is trying to change the way you feel because you're not happy with the sensation and you're resisting that sensation. And so it's a management of these vibrations, because what happens when you eat when you're not hungry, then the body has to digest the food and your mind is not on the problems that you have, because it takes energy to do this. And this is a big part of many people's lives, is this behavior to manage these sensations. And this management of the sensations, what it does is it perpetuates the problem, right? There's, for example, let's say someone feels like they're in a group, maybe with their friends or at work or whatever it is. Maybe at work, if people are going out to lunch and you go to lunch with everyone, and you go and you feel, I don't feel connected to the people, they're not talking to me. The next time, yeah, let's go to lunch. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to do something else. So let's look at this behavior. Is that you felt disconnected from them, and so your way of dealing with this is to disconnect even more from them. And so what you didn't want to happen, you're causing to happen. And this is a very simplistic example, but it's one that is quite common. But we can look at this at any of your behaviors. This is how your karma is perpetuated, is by your reaction to it, your resistance to it. And the more you resist, the more it perpetuates, because this behavior is causing what you didn't want to happen to happen. So if you want to understand these habit patterns, look at what is my behavior and what am I trying to avoid or trying to get. Because it's these sensations that we're talking about, like this anger and these sensations in the body, are being resisted. And this is the really foundation of Buddhism, is desire and aversion are attachments. And your reaction to these is what's keeping you attached to them. And so what happens when we get angry? Should we not get angry? Is that what we're supposed to do, is to teach ourselves not to be angry? This will be very hard for many people. But what do we do is when we get angry is we have to learn, the important thing is to not react. There's nothing wrong with getting angry. There's nothing wrong with feeling scared or any of these psychological aspects of the mind, but it's the reaction that's causing the problems. Like I said about people saying they're oversensitive, it's not that they're too sensitive, it's that they're too reactive. And like I gave with this example of anger, is the more you react to this anger, the more it's going to stay with you. And the same thing I said, okay, maybe you're having a bad day, you don't feel very secure, and so you eat when you're not hungry to manage the way you feel. And this is a reaction. And so what you need to do is to learn how to experience the sensation and say, okay, right now I can feel the anger. I can feel my chest getting heavier. I can feel the heart beating harder. I can feel my lungs. I can feel my mind is different. And just observe it. Don't try to control it. Don't try to control it by repressing it, and don't try to control it by reacting to it. But just observe it. Okay? And by observing it, you can start to tune into these sensations. And then you can ask yourself the question, the very important question to learn how to understand your habit patterns is, what is this sensation trying to get me to do or not do? Well, I'm getting angry and it's wanting me to yell at this person, or it's wanting me to hit this person, or whatever it is. And then with the mind, we go, well, what is the right thing to do? Is to just be present and to be open, to not act. And then when you can learn how to do this, then the anger starts to dissipate quicker. And what you've done is you've learned how to not reinforce it. Because now we go back to that example of the person who went out to lunch with the coworkers, and they felt disconnected. And so the feeling inside them, this vibration, was feeling neglected, feeling unconnected, feeling withdrawn. And so the reaction was to withdraw. But instead, if they just said, okay, what is the sensation I'm feeling? Well, the sensation is this loneliness, or this disconnection, or this feeling of not being connected with this group. And then the question is, well, what is the sensation causing me to want to do or not do? Well, the sensation is wanting me to not participate, to leave. Well, if I do that, aren't I going to feel more disconnected, more withdrawn? Okay, so what is the right thing to do? To continue to participate, to continue to interact. And once you get past this, you start to see that more often than not is that your interpretation of the experience was wrong, because it was based on your past experiences, and your past experiences are perpetuating the current experiences unless you learn not to react. Right? You learn to accept. And this is the first step to self-awareness, is acceptance. Until you accept, you'll never truly understand something. It's impossible. This is why when people have so much judgment, there's such a lack of understanding. Because it's acceptance. Self-realization does not happen in the mind, it happens in the heart. Because it's your capacity to accept, to love, that creates awareness, not your thinking. And so to learn how to change these behaviors, which is one of the three aspects of healing yourself, is to understand your reaction. Like I said, often the reaction is a corrupted perspective of the experience. Right, imagine that someone calls me fat. I know I'm not fat, and so I have no emotional reaction. I don't feel happy, I don't feel sad, I don't hate the person, I don't feel anything. Because I know it's not true, because I don't feel fat, I'm not fat. And so I don't have any reaction to this. I may think it's a strange thing for this person to say, or the person's not a nice person, whatever it is, but I don't feel hurt. But now imagine that I'm not eating right and taking care of myself and doing my exercises, and I may even weigh the same amount, and someone calls me fat. Well, maybe now I feel hurt, I feel angry, I feel ashamed. Well, what's the difference between one example and the other? It's how I feel about myself. Is my perception of myself, of my capacity to accept myself. And this is what we call, right, being triggered. This is a very common word these days, and and it's kind of funny to me when people say, "Oh, you're triggering me." And you go, well, what I do, it has nothing to do with you. It's your reaction that is about you. And you're feeling triggered because something in your experiences, something in your karma is very sensitive to what is happening in this moment. And you combine this with the narcissism that's going around these days, and people take everything as an attack on them. And this is the extreme case of really projecting your karma out and thinking that it is the experience that is happening to you. But nothing can trigger you but you. I'm not saying that everything everyone says is perfectly nice and 100% appropriate. But what I'm saying is that your reaction to it is the important part. Because you can understand and even have compassion for that person who thinks something, even though it's 100% incorrect or 100% abusive or offensive. And you can still have compassion for this person by accepting that this person is having a resistance to their own flow of consciousness. Just like I talked about with the slides and the projector, you have this flow of consciousness, and we talked about your consciousness being creativity, right? And what is creativity? But it is love. And so your expression, we can say your expression is creativity or your expression is love. It's the same. And when you're unable to express love, it's because there's some corruption in this projection of your consciousness. And it's another way to understand your habit patterns is to look at in which aspects of your life are you unable to express love? Which places is it difficult? Okay. So what I'm talking about is this interference with your expression or with your understanding by this reaction. The first aspect was tuning yourself into the vibration, and the second part is then understanding what this vibration is causing you to want to do or not do. So what I want to do right now is just to do a short little meditation about learning to act and not react. Because this is a very important aspect of how you experience life, but really how you deal with your karma. Because all your karma can stop at this moment if you just stop reacting. Because it's your behavior to this experience, unconsciously or consciously, which is perpetuating your karma. So for this meditation, we're going to put our hands in Gyan Mudra. The elbows are not touching the side, but The arms are about 45-degree angle out like this. Nice straight spine. So what you're going to do is you're going to inhale through the puckered lips, kind of like a whistling. And you're going to do this for about 3 to 4 seconds. And then you're going to hold the breath in for about 3 to 4 seconds. And then you're going to exhale like a cannon. Now it's going to be from the navel center. So the exhale is, so it's and now the cheeks don't get pushed out. The cheeks are very firm, and you're pushing out, blowing out through the navel center. And then you're repeating that. So begin. Nice and even. Just continue that. Okay, inhale deeply. Exhale, relax the hands down on the lap. Let the breath go naturally. Okay. So this is to help you learn how to not react. You don't want to suppress the feelings. You want to allow them without reacting to them. And you want to, while they're happening, is to build this sensitivity to them so that you can feel them. Because when you, for example, get angry, who is the first victim of your anger? You are. You're harming yourself. And if you start to understand that you are inflicting all this pain on yourself, and by reacting, you're reinforcing it, you're contributing to it. So it's important to understand that all this comes from within, that you are the source of all your suffering. Nothing external, it's you. It's the internal. It's this reaction, like I said, to, or the attachment to either aversion or desire. We want to desire something, or we want to avoid something. And these are attachments of not being present and not accepting. And like I talked about, this idea of yoga psychology, it's this training to create this awareness. And a lot of people focus on the physical aspect of yoga. In fact, there are many people who think yoga begins when they enter the yoga studio and ends when they roll up their mat after the class. And the physical aspect of yoga is such a small part of what yoga really is. And it's just a training to prepare the mind and the body to create this awareness of this flow of consciousness and to overcome the resistance to it by putting the body in proper alignment and then creating the mind to learn how to be present with it. Because you look at how you react to the physical postures in yoga or even in meditation, how you keep moving around when you're meditating. Well, what is that? It's a resistance. Unnecessary movement is a resistance of the unconscious becoming conscious. And you see this a lot in meditation. The people will be sitting still, meditating, and then they start to move around. Or they go grab their bottle to drink in the middle of a meditation. And they may say, oh, it's because I had this pain in my knees or my back. But there's two problems with this. The first is that this understanding of that you are not your mind and you're not your body is just an intellectual understanding. Because this is the training of yoga, of the physical part of yoga, is to train your mind to be separate, or to train your consciousness to be separate of the mind and the body. And this is how you approach life. And there's really three ways that people approach life. And we can look at this in the form of a yoga posture. So imagine that you're doing white tantric yoga and you have to have your arms out or up or something like this, and for 62 minutes. For the first 5 or 10 minutes, no problem, maybe even 20 minutes. But then all of a sudden it starts to get hard on the shoulders. And you can approach this in 3 ways. The first way is you can say, I'm very strong, I'm a strong person. And I'm going to not allow myself to drop my arms, and I'm going to use all my strength to keep my arms up. And so you're pushing, you're clenching your muscles, and you're holding your arms up with all your strength. How is your mind when you're doing this? Is it relaxed? No, it's a lot of tension. And this is how many people go through life. Everything is a battle. Everything is a confrontation, a conflict. And they force their way through their existence. And even at different points in your life, you may go through this, where everything is a problem. And even in our culture, this attitude can be rewarded, right? People say, oh, it's me against the world, and these people amass great fortunes by having this attitude. But how peaceful is their mind? How peaceful is their life? A lot of tension. And then there's the second way that most people go through life, is they're holding their arms out, and it starts to get difficult. And they say, okay, I'm not here. I'm on the beach. And they imagine themselves at the beach, laying out or watching the ocean, and they distract themselves from the pain. Now, how's the mind? Is it present? No. Your body is here, your mind is somewhere else, thinking of the past or the future, and we do this in life. Oh, I felt better last year about my life, and you start to think about this, or in the future this can happen for me and that can happen for me, or you distract yourself through drugs and alcohol or cinema or whatever it is. And this is how most people go through life, is through distraction. And there's a duality. The mind is not present. And how can you enjoy your life when you're not even present? It's like trying to enjoy a party that you're not at. How are you going to do that? And this is unfortunately how many people go through life. Then there's the third way, and this is the way that is how you're going to overcome not just the posture that you're doing, but you're going to overcome all your suffering in your life. You're going to learn how to identify the truth. And so this is by putting the arms out when they're getting sore, the shoulders are getting sore, it's getting difficult. And you start to have this conversation with yourself. Because what is the conversation that's going on in your mind? The conversation is, put the arms down, just for a moment. It's getting too difficult. Just for a moment, then you can put them back up. And your mind is repeating this, and you're trying to fight this. And what happens is that most people, the majority of people, identify with the mind. Even all these yogis who say, I'm not my mind, I'm not my body, they say this and they understand this intellectually, but experientially they don't. And so they keep repeating this mantra to themselves, I have to put my arms down. And I can see this when I'm giving a yoga class and I'm doing, for example, the stretch pose with breath of fire. Right? Everyone knows this posture. And I'm doing it for, say, 2 minutes. And I can watch the students, and at about a minute and a half, they start to shake. And I can see that they're really struggling and that they're going to drop the posture. And if I say, okay, 20 more seconds, all of a sudden the posture becomes easy for them. If I wouldn't have said 20 more seconds, within 5 seconds they would have dropped the posture. But when I said 20 seconds, no problem. 20 seconds, they did it. Why is that? It's because they were so attached with the mind, and the mind doesn't like uncertainty. And the mind was telling them, put it down, you can't do it anymore. But as soon as I said 20 seconds, they saw the end goal, and they said, I could do 20 seconds. And this is what our mind does, is we're attached to these thoughts. And this is what we call false identification. When you look at anything that is temporary as you, it's false identification. When you look at the body, the mind as you suffer. Because the body is not going to always be the same. Right? You get older, you start to have pains and aches, the weight isn't the same, the hair starts to fall out or turn gray, and the skin starts to wrinkle, and it brings suffering. If you're identifying with the physical. And when we're doing this posture and we're identifying with the mind, we're identifying with these thoughts, and we think we have to listen to them. And your mind can be your biggest enemy or your best friend. It depends who's controlling it. If the mind is controlling you, it's your enemy. If you are controlling the mind, it is your friend. Right? It's like owning a company, and you hire a manager to manage the company, and the manager is telling you what to do, and you're the owner. This is what it's like when you're listening to the mind. And so when your arms are out and it's getting very difficult, you tell yourself, I can feel the pain in my shoulders. I can feel it. It's happening. I'm not trying to ignore it. It's happening. But is the pain happening to me or just my physical body? What's happening to my physical body? Because my body could be lit on fire and it doesn't really truly harm the true me. So we have to sit there and say, okay, the pain is real in the physical body, but it isn't me. If I don't move my arms, what's going to happen to me? Maybe my shoulders will be sore the next day, but is my body going to fall apart? And again, it's important to understand the difference between pain that is a warning of injury and a pain that is just discomfort. And what we're talking about now is pain that's discomfort, unless you have some pre-existing condition. And so we have this conversation. We say, okay, I can feel it in my body, but my body is not me. And I can hear my mind telling me to put the arms down, but I'm not going to react to it. I'm not going to listen. And the more we're able to push ourselves to this realization, maybe push isn't the right word, the more we're allowed to, the more we allow this understanding to happen, to unfold, the pain starts to go away. Because the pain is caused by your aversion to it, your reaction to it. Otherwise, it's just a sensation. And when you can stop reacting, and I'm not talking reacting just mentally, but reacting on a very deep, subtle level, then the pain is just a vibration. And the pain is temporary. It'll go away and pleasure will come. And the pleasure will go away and then pain will come back. But if you understand that it's all temporary, that it is not you, you're able to get past it and hold those arms out as long as you want. And that's what all these yoga postures are. That's what this meditation is to try to be still. And the more still you can be, the deeper you can get and the more subtle you can get. Right? It's like when you walk in a lake. If you're walking in the lake, you're kicking up all the dirt. You can't see down. The water's not clear. But if you're very still, all the dirt falls to the bottom and you can see down to your feet. And this is what you want to do, is to learn how to keep yourself still. When you're meditating, don't move. You may have the inclination to itch your nose or to move your hips. Try to resist it. Because it's unnecessary movement is this resistance to consciousness. It's a resistance to something that is coming up from the unconscious. And the more you can be present without moving, the more you'll recognize it and see it. And nonetheless, if you can notice that you're starting to try to react to something or trying to move, say, well, why am I moving? What do I feel? What is the sensation? And let's allow the sensation, accept the sensation. Right? I said acceptance is the first step to self-awareness and to removing your karma. And so understand that all this unnecessary movement, all this unnecessary action in your life is a distraction. And it's a reaction to the sensations within the framework of the body that are created from the mind. Is that clear? So when we talk about changing our behavior, what are we talking about then? When we're talking about changing our life, what are we talking about changing? When we talk about change, what are we talking about? Right? We have some behavior we don't like. We have some experience that's going on in our life that we're not satisfied with. And we think about changing. And so we work very hard to better ourselves. But what are we really talking about when we talk about change? What changes? Who changes? So when we're talking about false identification, this means that anything that is temporary is not you. Anything that changes is not you. The body changes, the mind changes. Anything that changes is not you. And this is what we're looking for, is we're looking for what's left beyond the things that change. Because anything that changes dies, right? Even things that are not alive, so to speak, like the chair, eventually it's going to disintegrate. The buildings, eventually they'll disintegrate, given enough time. So anything that changes dies. Now, the consciousness or the soul doesn't die, right? It gets reincarnated into another life. And if it doesn't die, it means that it doesn't change. And if it doesn't change, it means that it's either perfect or imperfect. But it can't become what it's not. Right? If it's perfect, that's it, it's perfect. If it's imperfect, it's never going to be perfect. So we take it upon faith that it's perfect, right? Because everything is perfect in existence of God. And so if it's perfect, it means that it doesn't change, that you are already perfect. There's nothing to change about the true you. You are perfect. Did you know this? Is this news to you? That you're perfect. So if you're perfect, what changes? And why do we need change? So you look into the mirror when you get up in the morning and you see yourself and you start to think about yourself. Oh, I look good today, or I don't look good today. I look too short. My hair doesn't look right, or I don't look confident, or whatever it is. And all this is going on unconsciously or consciously or both. And based on this thinking and this feeling, because remember, the thinking creates the feelings. So you have the thought, and then it is represented somewhere in the framework of the body, and then you react to it. You look in the mirror and you say, I don't feel confident. I don't feel good about myself. So then your behavior is of this type of person. Or you say, I'm not a good person. And so then you behave like this. Right? This is what happens with children. When you start to condemn them at a young age, they start to feel that they're not a good person and they start to behave this way. And we do this as adults. And we perceive ourselves through one of our false identifications, and we react to it through our life. And that behavior is based on who you think you are. And it is who you think you are that is preventing you from seeing who you are. And many of these habit patterns we have are so ingrained in us that we consider them aspects of our personality. And this is a false identification. I'm shy, I am this way, I'm that way, and we mistaken our personality for aspects of ourselves, or our habit patterns for aspects of our personality. And this is false identification. Oh, every time this experience happens, I do this. You're identifying with it. And we do this through archetypes. I'm this archetype or that archetype, I'm this. And we identify even with things that are positive, they're preventing you from seeing the truth. Whenever you identify with anything that is temporary, it's that much harder to see what's true. Some identifications may feel better. You may create a bigger attachment to them. And this is how the ego is formed. Is you're attached to this way of thinking. I mean, what is the ego? Where's the ego? Where does the ego exist? Is it in your shoulder? In your hands? Where is the ego? In your mind? Where? In the front part of the brain, the back part of the brain stem, the frontal lobe? Where is it? You can't locate it. Because what the ego is just a collection of thoughts. It's a collection of thoughts that you identify with. I am a man, I am a woman, I am a father, I'm a mother, I'm a homeowner, I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm a yoga teacher. Anything that comes after I am is this identification, is this ego. And this is what you're reacting to. Is this in accord with my ego, or does this go against my ego? If it goes against my ego, I'm offended. If it goes against my ego, I'm hurt, I'm suffering. Where does depression come from? It comes from this broken sense of the ego. Right? You have a job that you go to every month, and you lose the job, or you have a marriage or a partnership and it's broken up and you get depressed. Why do you get depressed? You get depressed because now this idea of who I thought I was doesn't work anymore. So who am I then? And the stronger you're attached to these thoughts, the deeper the depression. Because you go to work every month and they pay you, which is this reinforcement that I'm a good person, that I'm valuable, and you lose your job and there's no reinforcement of this through any payment, and you don't see yourself as this professional person or whatever it is, and then you start to get depressed because this idea of who you thought you were is no longer working. And so what has to happen is that this idea of who you thought you were needs to expand in order to let go of this depression. And each time it expands, it's really letting go of this identification. Sometimes people substitute one identification for the other, and it gets them somewhat out of the depression temporarily or superficially, but it's this false identification. And the more you think about who you are this way, the smaller your life becomes. Because, oh, someone of my nationality doesn't do this. Someone of my sex, we don't do this. Someone of my mindset or sense of humor, we don't do this. And so you start to, my culture, we don't do this. And what you're doing is you're creating borders. And they're preventing you from seeing who you are. And they're preventing your experience from happening. Anytime there's some definition to who you are, it's a limit. And it's preventing you from seeing the truth. Because then you react to this perception. And this is the only thing that changes is your perception. And it's very difficult for people to stop perceiving who they are. And the same thing goes with loving themselves and self-esteem and all these ideas. And if you come down to the essence of like self-esteem and the ego, it's really learning how to not think about yourself in these terms, which is very scary and very difficult for many people because they like the security of this ideal of who, or this idea of who they want to be or who they think they are. But I can tell you from my personal experience, the more you go down this path, the less you think about yourself. And you go to the other extreme, the more you think about yourself, the more you lack confidence and self-esteem, the more you're concerned about yourself. The more you're worried about failing and all this, the more you're thinking about yourself. You go the other opposite, the more you're expressing love and the more you're expressing yourself without resistance, the less you're thinking about yourself. When you going back to this expression of cooking dinner with love, you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about the experience. You're not even thinking, you're just in the experience. This is what we call the flow, right? Is when we're in an experience and we're not aware of time, we're not aware of ourselves. And this is also connecting to this subtle vibration of intuition, is how to live in the subtle realm of this consciousness which illuminates our life without resistance. And this is a life with joy. This is a life that is light. But what happens is something happens and that we can live like this, and then we have a couple days of this, and then something goes bad and we start to feel bad about ourselves, and we revert back to our old habit patterns. But if you recognize that these thoughts, or even when you start to revert into these habit patterns, is that it's just temporary, it's just a false identification. Even yogis get depressed. The difference is that they're able to recognize that it's just a collection of thoughts that is making me feel this way. And that if I change my behavior and change my focus, my identification, it will go away. It's not real. It's not the true me. And this is where you need to cultivate this understanding of the temporary in reaction to your behavior, in reaction to your perception, to live a life full of joy. And now I'm not saying when you live this life full of joy that there aren't difficult aspects, because often people substitute this word happiness, and this becomes their path, the path of happiness. And this is the wrong path. If you make your life the path of happiness, you're going to suffer, because happiness is temporary. And then what happens when the happiness goes away at some period in your life is that you struggle even more, because now, not just that you don't have happiness, that you're a failure because you can't maintain the temporary, and you become attached to it. And the path of self-awareness is not an easy path. It's not full of happiness this way, but it's full of understanding, and this understanding is the self-expression, and this self-expression is what brings contentment. It brings joy. And this is what you try to cultivate, is this capacity to express yourself. And the more complete that you can express yourself, the more uninhibited you are, and the more joy you will have in your life. Any questions? Okay, you guys understand? Perfect. All right. So we'll put the hands together at the center of the chest. Close the eyes. Inhale to begin. Sat Nam. Sat Nam. Sat Nam. Sanam. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So if you enjoyed this, I recommend that you listen to my podcast. I have a podcast. It's called The Story of Me with Amarjit Singh. And you can find the website is thestoryofmepodcast.com. And you can register for my mailing list, or you could find all the links to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It was amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you very much.